What's up, everybody? My name is Sam Dando, and today we're going to do a little deck tech on Puffin. So of the three new heroes that have come out of High Seas, I think Puffin was the one that I enjoyed the most when I first started playing all of them. Now, I think that she is not one of the best heroes in the game. Obviously, there's still some more deck building, and as we've seen, many variants start to come out between boost variants, pirate variants, and some hybrids in between. I wanted to focus more so on a pirate build, so if you're here for a more aggressive boost-oriented list, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be focusing more on pirate-oriented Puffin. It's a little bit more mid-rangey, a little bit more focused on value exchanging. But I think it's been super fun. I've really enjoyed the deck from a number of different lists that I've played and from a number of different heroes that I've played as well. I feel like she fits somewhere right in the middle of like a very strong exchanging value mid-range kind of deck where you're going to be wanting to throw out big boats, get good 3-card hand exchanges, and then the utility between being able to draw and cycle through your different engines with cogs and gold, I think adds a really interesting element of how you can flexibly move through your deck, set up pitch stacking, and things like that. Now the deck itself, I don't know if it sits very highly in the meta. We haven't really seen it gain much success throughout the current national season and since its release. I think we've seen Gravy be far more successful out of the three heroes. I think Marlin, there's still a lot of untapped potential that Levi has shown that the deck has that I don't know if people are really have grasped onto yet. But as it stands, I think Puffin is a very interesting hero, and you can always enjoy playing with Polly, of course, and cranking, of course, is always a good time too. So let's just get into it. My list, again, is going to be more pirate-oriented, more value and mid-range oriented as well. So because of that, to start, we're going to be playing triple Command & Conquer. I still think Command & Conquer is one of the best mid-range tools, one of the best aggressive ways to extract value and trade with your opponent. And we are playing pummels in the sideboard. So of course, CNC pummel is one of the greatest combinations that we've seen in Flesh and Blood. And it still is today to be one of the most potent combinations as well. And I think that this deck has sometimes struggled to push damage over the top, and pummel helps with that. And also Command & Conquer does as well, since people cannot D-react to Command & Conquer. In addition to that, we have 3 red Soup Up. This card is really awesome. I always was such a huge fan of Soup Up when it first came out in Bright Lights, but now I think it really finds a really solid home in this kind of deck. Didn't really always fit super well with Dio, but I think in Puffin, it fits a really strong purpose between you're usually always cracking an item on your turn, whether it be destroying gold or a cog breaking. So it will always have go again pretty much. And then also being able to have that additional 4 block is just such good value with galvanizing. This deck is like the best galvanizing deck that currently exists. So it really takes advantage of it well. And then we just have like our standard boats. We have Sky Skimmer and Cloud Skiff. Both basically are the same exact card. It's just that one costs 1 and the other one costs 0. And they have slight different in attack value. But other than that, they're basically the same card. They're just to help you do value trading, extending your hand, extending your turn. And they're 3 blocks. And they're just really solid cards as well. And then in addition to that, we're playing, for now, the 2 costs. We have Cogwork Zeppelin. This is probably the best 2 for 6 that is not the Majestic, of course. I think that this card is really strong just because it helps you extend your turn. It allows you to create another cog. And then it's also really threatening on hit in combination with Pummel. So I think that this card is very strong. I'm now seeing people play yellows as well. I'm not playing yellows in my list. I could see down the line of adding a couple yellows as well, just because it's another really good 2-cost target for Pummel. But I'm only playing 2 red Pummel. I'm not on like the blue Pummels and maxed out reds yet. But if it does push further in that direction, I could see yellows being added. And then we have the really good ones. We have Cogworks Dovetail, which is a Majestic boat. This one is really, really good. It's really one of the more slightly unfair cards in the deck. There's not really a lot of unfair cards in Puffin, but I think this one is definitely one of the best cards of when you play it against your opponent, depending on how many cogs you have, can really extend your turn and turn your like 2 or 3 card hand into being very threatening, getting the cog refresh. I think a lot of people know this ruling, but if you are newer to the deck, how it works is since you can activate its ability 3 times, if you have 2 cogs, you can attack with it, buff it twice so it goes to 7. And then if it hits, it'll refresh your cogs, and then you could activate it a third time to give it go again in the resolution step, which is a really nice little interaction. So even if you don't have the maximum of 3 cogs, you could still kind of utilize its full range of ability, and it can really help you then end with like a Spitfire at the end, or end with like a Sky Skimmer or a Cloud Skiff or something like that. And then we have the big boy, the Howl's Moving Castle, Dragon, Dinosaur, Boat, Whale, Palantir. This is like one of the most fun cards in the deck. It's really like the reason that you'd want to play this kind of variant, I think, because of how many cogs you're playing, how consistently you try to perform. Now, it's not a card that you always get off. Like, you're not always trying to make it happen. Sometimes it does, but it is a lot easier in this deck, I think, to successfully resolve the ability of Palantir. And it is just one of your best endgame finishers, one of your early game advantage pieces, where if you can just rip an important piece of equipment from your opponent, it could just really push the game in your favor at that point. Huge fan of this card. It's one of the reasons that drew me to Puffin in the first place was because of this boat in particular. And then we have 3 cog in the machine. I think it's just a necessary card to kind of kickstart your engine, get cards working. And of course, if you are running low on your system, it allows you to just create those 2 cogs right out the gate. And then gaining an action point is actually really important as well. We're also playing Enlightened Strike in the sideboard, which, if you want to be more aggressive, fits really well with cog in a machine, because any deck that can abuse action points and then also run Enlightened Strike, given the fact that you can use the draw card effect and still retain your action point, is really solid, and it is a really good mechanic to try to abuse. So cog in the machine, allowing to help you not get fatigued, allowing you to kickstart your engine, and then of course being able to gain that extra action point so you can have those bigger turns sometimes, is just a really key feature. So really good card. Obviously it's a Majestic, so it just goes into the deck. Now on to the yellows, where I am only playing 2 Loan Shark. I've tried it at 3, I've tried it at 1. I think 2 is a good number. It's not a great card, it feels like, but it is a kind of a necessary card. It's one of those cards that if you are having a slower part of the game and you really are struggling to kickstart your engine going by getting gold and getting your cogs going, having Loan Shark is really good, especially in the early game, to start that economy and start the flow of gameplay. And because of that, I think it is necessary. It can just be not as great in the end game step, but it's still a 3-block, it's still a yellow pitch. So it has many features to it. You're not going to like keep it on board for multiple turns. Usually you're going to have to concede the 2 life or discarding a card. Usually you just take the 2 damage because it's worth the trade of life. But I have eventually moved on to liking this card. And because of that, I am playing it at 2, and I do think it has really good value for the deck. So on to the blues. I'm playing 3 Sunken Treasure. This is the only block card I'm playing. I know that a lot of people are playing the Pinion Sentry or whatever, the other 3-block that like allows you to create another cog. I think that block cards are just really bricky in this deck, especially because you're drawing a lot of cards in the middle of your turn. So I don't really like seeing having a lot of blocks. But this card is really good because graveyard manipulation is very powerful in this game, especially because a lot of different classes can get really hurt by that, whether it be Assassin, whether it be Ranger, or other like Gravy, for example, being able to flip one of their Watery Grave cards. Really powerful. And again, just being able to get your engine going by creating gold. Similarly, I'm playing 3 Seafloor Salvage, which is kind of like a slightly worse version of Sunken Treasure, but very similar in what it's meant to do, where it's supposed to get your engine going, especially in the end game when you're getting closer to that fatigue state. Because sometimes what Puffin struggle to do is if you get your opponent to like 5 or sub 5, sometimes this particular list can struggle to just kill them because you're not able to like go over the average value threshold, and you could start to run out of resources, whether it be you're starting to run out of gold, you're starting to run out of cogs. So in the end game, when you kind of need that push or to maintain your economy, having the additional seafloors, I feel like has been really helpful to maintain that consistent flow of gold. And so you could continue to crank and produce cogs even in the end game state to extract all the value out of your Spitfire and stuff like that. And then, of course, we have Cogworks Workshop, the equivalent of the red Majestic. Again, just a really strong card. really good at continuing the flow of your machine, your economy, continuing to create cogs, put more steam counters on them. The cool thing about this that I've found as well is that like a lot of times if you have copper cogs, which I am playing, you're going to want to make sure you're splitting the steam counters on those. You want to prioritize putting steam counters on your copper cogs because your golden cogs are supposed to be destructible. There's nothing that specifically interacts with golden cogs other than your golden sky warden, which again is in the deck, it's just in the sideboard, which you're going to want to destroy your cogs. So if you can incentivize not investing on your golden cogs so that they can be destroyed so you can get maximum value from them, I'd highly advise that. So optimize putting steam counters on your copper cogs rather than your golden cogs is one of my things to kind of advise you on. And then with galvanize, of course, we got the 3 Steel Street Hoons and then the 3 blue soup up. Again, similarly carrying on with what I said about the red, galvanize, just a really powerful ability in this deck. And then also having the ability to extend with further go again is good, especially in the end game if you're going to need to try to extend beyond your opponent's hand to kill them. I think these cards end up being quite valuable in the end game. But just being 4 blocks is good. 4 blocks are just really high value, which is why, again, I kind of have opted to cut down on the block cards because they're less flexible. You can't put them in arsenal, and they only serve one purpose, as opposed to these where you could still be aggressive with them. You can still get proactive value off of them, and they can be arsenaled, which I think is really good value. And then, here, let me move these over. And then we go on to our more pummel targets, essentially, just more attacks that have the ability to be pummeled. I have 3 blue Battalion Bark, and then 3 blue Cogwork Zeppelin. Again, this is probably the best 2-4 whatever attack that you can get to have pummel, best on hit. So we're playing that along with the reds. Again, there might be space for yellows. I'm not sure. Maybe down the line I'll add in some yellows. And then the Battalion Bark is just actually a really, really good end game piece. Where when you are getting to that potential fatigue state, you can set up your pitch stack so you can have a pummel with the blue Battalion Bark, and a lot of times that'll be able to close the game out. And it's just good value. It's just a high tack card. It's just really good in the end game scenario. I'm actually become a big fan of this card. I really like having the blue Battalion Barks. And then, of course, we got the copper cogs. Now, I have opted to play 6 copper cogs. I think that if you're going to play more of a pirate-centric build where you're focusing on trying to get more boat value, boat control, whatever, I think 6 is a really good number. What I will do is sometimes if I'm not needing the full value, so if I'm playing Conqueror of the High Seas, which again I have in my sideboard, I'll play all 6 because you want to have max amount of blues in your list. A lot of times I'm also siding over 60 cards. Again, because this deck can struggle sometimes of just running out of threat density depending on the matchup. So you're going to want to have as many cards in your deck that can produce damage. So when you do that, you want to make sure that your ratios are still even. So by adding in more blues, it can help even out your resource curve. And especially for playing Conqueror of the High Seas, which can traditionally be somewhat of a bricky card, maximizing blue content is really good. And copper cogs are just strong in the deck, generally speaking. Obviously, like if you play a copper cog and you have a gold and you crank, you get to draw a card and replace it, and then it's on board value to interact with all your boats and stuff like that. So I think 6 is a really good number. Again, you could sideboard to just having 4 if you need to be more defensive, if you're not going to need to be as proactive, but you have the ability to play all 6. So this is kind of like my main board. I guess minus like the 2 blue copper cogs, but I figured I'd just have them all in there just for consistency. And then we can go to the sideboard here. Let me clean up a little bit of space. All right. Now for sideboard, I have Triple and Lightning Strike. This is a card that as I've played more and more with, I actually really, really like. I've flipped between 2 and 3. Right now I'm on 3. I might be on 2 later on. But I really do like this card in this deck. It fits really well. Primarily because you do have some cards that you just draw that you just kind of like hate having in your hand. You can't quite convert them in the end step because you don't want to arsenal them. Cards like Golden Sky Warden, cards like Sunken Treasure, stuff that just doesn't really do much for you when you put it in an arsenal. So it's good to have a card like this that you could send it away, sometimes you end up with those bricky hands because this deck does kind of reflect a Guardian-esque playstyle where you want to have a balance of blues and reds, but sometimes you draw all blues and sometimes you draw all reds, and those hands kind of suck. So having Enlightened Strike as a card to kind of even out those different hands and have a little bit more of a generalized flow, and especially if you need to be more proactive in a matchup where you're not going to be as defensive, you need more aggression. I think Enlightened Strike is a really good card. And again, in combination with Cog in the Machine, it just is like a beautiful match. Again, any deck that can give Enlightened Strike go again inherently or gain action points is really good. It's positioned well to abuse a card like Enlightened Strike. So really big fan of that. Then we have the Golden Sky Wardens. Of course, this card's insane. I have it in the sideboard because against aggressive matchups, you don't necessarily want to play it because it's kind of slow. It's a little bit more consistent. But if you high roll this card and you just have like 3 cogs that are about to die and you draw this and you just get 3 gold, it's crazy. Like the game becomes a completely different game. If you're able to stockpile like 5 or 6 gold at one point, you're chilling for a large portion of the game. So I am a huge fan of Golden Sky Warden. It's also a pummelable target in desperate times. Desperate times call for desperate measures. So if you really need to arsenal this card and you do have pummeling, at least you can present a pretty decent hit that people wouldn't be expecting to be pummeled. But this card is just so good. Golden Sky Warden's an insane card. Having it at 3 to maximize your potential for drawing it to continue your economic flow, I think is really, really good. So I'm a huge fan of this card. 2 yellow Jolly Bludger. I don't know if this card's actually any good. I've talked to a number of Puffin players. I've kind of tried it in a number of different veins from 1 to 3 to 2. I really don't know. I don't know if I actually like the card. I don't know if it actually works how I want it to half the time. It is an exclusive card, so only Puffin can play it. So I feel like there's some merit to having that exclusivity against certain matchups. Like against Wizard, it's pretty good. Like Kano, you could steal all their potions, which I think has been really effective. You could play it against Verdance. I haven't really had a ton of success that way. You could play it against Victor to try to steal his gold. Again, haven't had as much success because although you can give it overpower, it's not really that big of an attack that people can't just put armor or block with a defense reaction. So it's kind of like pseudo-threatening. Like the threat of it hitting is very rarely as potent as its actual on-hit. So I don't know. I continue to test it just because I want to explore it a little bit further. But this slot could easily be something far more dependable, like Erase Face, for example, which is just consistently going to have a really powerful on-hit and is consistently really good into like Syndra, for example, which is a really powerful deck right now. So try it out. Tell me what you think. Honestly, I'm not really sure if I like this card, but I think this is a tech slot. It easily could just be Erase Face, or I only play 2 Conqueror of the High Seas right now. It could just be a 3rd Conqueror if you really wanted to maximize this card. 2 Conqueror, obviously the card's insane, but I don't think it's nearly as insane as people say it is. Like people are saying, oh, it's the next Felling or it's the next Codex. I think that's like not even close, primarily because it costs a lot to play it. It costs 4, obviously, so you need 2 blues to maximize its potential. You could obviously pitch a blue with Tunic, and then it's a 7 worse Command and Conquer. But the fact that it can be played, D-Reacts can be played to it, really minimizes its potency. I feel like so many times I play Conquer the High Seas, and they just go D-React from Arsenal, or they just, play a block with 2 D-Reacts from hand, or play a card, armor, whatever. Like, it very rarely comes up that it's a really high value card. Like when you play Codex, right? It's like you have 1 card in hand, you just drop Codex, your opponent removes a card, you go leave no witnesses, attack them. Like that's just so insane. You go Felling, it's just a 2 card 11 value every time. It's just really dumb. This card doesn't feel like it has nearly that high of a ceiling, but it does do what you want it to do in the deck. It's another good extender. It's another good threatening card that at least has a good on-hit. And then paired with Pummel, it can be quite threatening. I have it at 2 because it can be slightly clunky at 3, I have found in this particular list. I'm not playing like 30 plus blues, right? So you're not like Gravy Bones or Marlin where you're going to have much higher consistent access to more resources. This deck is a little different in that regard. So you can just have times where this card's floating in your arsenal or floating in your hand, and you just can't play it. So I'm a little bit more cautious to play it at 3. But I have played it at 3, and it's been fine, but I kind of like it more at 2. But again, like I think that this is highly adaptable between the Jolly Bludgers and the Conquerors. You can change those numbers however you want. And then I do have... What the heck? Do I not have a second Pummel here? What happened? Well, I guess I have one pummel, but I'm supposed to be playing. I'm supposed to be playing two. I'm not. Oh wait. Hold on. We found it. Boom. Second pummel. Just like how people aren't expecting it when you're having floating two, I just surprised you guys there. You were not expecting the second pummel. That was all according to plan. I'm a professional. That's how we do it in these videos. Two pummel out of nowhere. They were never expecting the second one to begin with. This card's awesome. I think that if you're playing a pirate build, you got to play pummel. It's super necessary, actually. And I don't mean that in the sense of like when people build a new deck for a new hero and they go, maybe if we just throw pummels in it, it'll be good. I genuinely think that like this deck does need to play pummel. It is a really powerful, you don't have a lot of power plays in this deck. You know, like a lot of decks have particular power cards or power sequences. This deck does not. Like you have Palantir, which is like your power play. And even that, it takes a lot to set up. So having something to hold you over throughout the course of the game or to push like one or two really big swings to knock your opponent down, disrupt them, to get them into that killable threshold sooner, and also just put them in a position to die by having pummel, I think it's really important. I've experimented obviously with pummel at 3. Again, it's kind of a clunky card, right? You do have a good amount of pummel targets between CNC, CNC, Conqueror, Zeppelin. You have the blue Zeppelin and the blue Battalion Bark, and then the Palantir. And then you have pseudo targets, right? Like Golden Sky Warden, I guess. And even Conqueror, I think, is like a pseudo target. It does come up, but it obviously requires like a pretty big hand to do that. It's a 4-card 12, which again is like not great. 4-card 12 with 2 potential on hits. But again, I think that you definitely need to do this. And again, paired with like Jolly Bludger, it can be really strong in particular scenarios. There's a lot of subjective value, again, within this. But I think pummel is a necessity if you're going to play this style of list. I know I've seen people playing like 3 red pummel, 2 blue pummel. I just think it's like a lot of pummel. I think you could try blue pummels. I haven't tried that. I kind of like that concept, but I want to maximize damage and threat density. Blue pummel might be a little bit more consistent though. You could try that. I would advise giving both a shot. And then our last couple cards here are just 2 Sink Below and then 2 Shelter from the Storm. Obviously, 2 really good defensive tools, really good mid-range tools. So if you're playing against something that you expect to have further on hits like Ranger and aggro matchups, assassin matchups, Guardians, stuff like that, these come in. Again, you're pretty like bulky in terms of how much defensive capacity you have between all the 4 blocks from Galvanized. And then obviously you have a lot of 3 blocks in the deck. So just having these is really good just to help on those pivot turns where if they are going to be doing some big reaction thing or a pummel or having some sort of big spinal crush or something like that, it's good to just have these for efficiency. And again, you can put them in Arsenal, unlike the Galvanized, which you cannot. So having that as a good tempo setup is really good. So the sideboard is very simple. Again, like this deck is very straightforward. It wants to be very consistent. It's built to be at a very consistent performer, and the way it works is just get your engine going, maintain the engine, and just try to keep that going for as long as possible. And then we'll just get to the equipment here. And again, if you wanted to change anything, I think there's a lot of room for that too, just because given there's a lot of overlap with cards being very similar to how they perform and what they do, I think that you can very easily find different things to trim and cut and swap. We have Puffin, and I'm only playing Spitfire. I know other people are playing the Blunderbuss in addition, but I think Spitfire is really strong. I haven't felt any need to play the other gun. Just having a free attack with a cog that doesn't cost anything, and you can consistently do it pretty regularly, has been very powerful, especially that it can bump to 3. So against Gravy, if you need to clear particular allies, it's very easy to do so with this particular card. But I'm a big fan of the Spitfire. I haven't felt the need again to play the Blunderbuss, and I think that the more you play the deck, especially in a more value-oriented mid-range list like this, Spitfire ends up being much more consistent across the board. Then we have Polycranka. This is probably one of the most interesting aspects of the deck. Of course, you're able to play it out and have a second crank on demand so you can get your intellect like 4.5 or whatever it is, so that you're always drawing another card. Now, of course, as soon as Poly comes out, it becomes like an immediate kill target for a lot of decks. They want to immediately get rid of it. So knowing when to use Polycranka and when to hold, I think is a lot of where the skill comes from this deck, so that you can position yourself in a way to gain tempo or maintain tempo. But I think that it's a really cool card. I really enjoy this aspect of the deck, which is, again, more fun for me in how the deck plays. Just be aware that wizards can just fry the bird out of the sky even before you use it, like, because a lot of their spells say any target. So even if he is not on the board yet, he could just get obliterated with like any spell, basically. So if you're playing against wizard, I advise you just put out the poly as soon as possible so that they don't just like shoot him out of the sky immediately. And get your value when you can. And then for equipment, the main equipment that I'm using primarily is Crown of Dominion, Cogsworks Tinkerings, Tunic, and Unicycle for more proactive matchups. I really like this equipment setup. Crown of Dominion is really, really powerful. Just being able to have that gold right away so you could kickstart your engine, kickstart your game plan whenever you want right out the gate has been very valuable. And I have really liked having Crown of Dominion. It's harder for me to not play Crown of Dominion than it is to play it. But I do have Crown of Providence in the sideboard. I do think there are some matchups you're going to want, like Assassin, particularly, or Guardian, or stuff like that, or Ranger, where you're going to want to have more defensive value so you can slow the game down. But if you're going to be more quick, more proactive, more aggressive, Crown of Dominion is the way to go, along with Unicycle. This card is really, really strong. And Cogworks Tinkerings is an insane legendary. I love this card. Knowing when to use this is also kind of like Polycranka, where you can really set up big plays, set up a lot of value. Even sometimes just getting the cog to have an item to galvanize with a soup up or a defensive item, or like when you have adaptive plating in your leg slot, it can be a lot of value. It's like a 5 block essentially when you think of it like that. So this card's really good. Tunic, you're going to want to always play if you're going to be playing the pummels. Just to have that additional curve is really helpful, and of course, it evens out a lot of your plays. But Tunic is still like one of the best legendaries in the game, and I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. I know they keep trying to create like decently powered chest legendaries, but until the day where you're able to power creep Tunic, which I think is a scary prospect, which you kind of don't want, Tunic is still like one of the best chess pieces for a mid-range style deck where it's going to go long, you're going to get multiple opportunities to use it, you're going to extract a lot of value out of it based on your curve. And of course, being able to just have Tunic to go like Tunic Dovetail is insane. I mean, that's just a really, really powerful play. And then obviously going like Tunic Cog in the Machine, Tunic Cogworks Workshop to draw a card. Converting those resources into another card is really powerful. So I think Tunic is just a really, really important chess piece for this deck. And then we have more of our defensive items. So we have Crown of Providence, we have Teklo Foundry Heart, and then we have Adaptive Plating. These are for the matchups that if they're going to be having more on-hits, more threatening stuff to you, you're going to want to play this. It's just bigger armor. You know, it just allows you to have better pivot turns, and you can be stockier. So these can be easily swapped for the equipment that you have in these slots. And then you always keep the arms because the arms are insane. And then we have your AB, you got the Zeotronic, and then you have Adaptive Dissolver. Adaptive Dissolver is just really good because even if you need AB1 against like Vincent, or if you wanted to play it into Verdance or something like that, it allows you the flexibility to put it in the slots that you want to put it in. So like for Kano, that's like one of the only matchups where the arms aren't very good, right? So you can easily swap that in for the arms. But for most other matchups, you're always going to want the arms in. So you could swap this out for like the legs or something like that if you're playing against Vincent, for example. So I like having the AB flexibility as opposed to having over like the Achilles Accelerator, for example. But I think AB3 is suitable for most of the wizards that you're going to be facing. And I didn't want to commit another slot because the deck is honestly kind of tight. The sideboard is pretty open to what you want to change with it, obviously. But I think equipment-wise, this is the optimal equipment suite that I like having available to me. And you could even trim on some of this, to be honest. Like, I think that like Teklo Foundry Heart is a good card, but a lot of times I'm always missing Tunic when I'm playing this. So having the block is important, but you could even get to the point where you're like, I think the Tunic is more valuable than having the Teklo Foundry Heart, and you could cut that. I don't think you're ever going to want to cut the Adaptive Plating. I think this card is really strong. Crown of Providence, you could maybe cut. Unicycle, you honestly could maybe cut because Adaptive Plating is just so powerful. But these are just kind of like luxuries. They're not necessities. They're just kind of luxury items. So yeah, that's kind of where I am with my list. I still think there's a lot of potential for where Puffin can be built and what she can be developed into. Obviously, being a mechanologist, there's a pretty wide card pool available to you of ways that you can adapt and customize the deck. Going forward, I'm not sure if the boost list is going to be superior or if the pirate list is going to be superior. I enjoy the pirate list more. I feel like if you're going to play like a boost list, just play Dash IO or the original Dash while she's still here. I think that the reason and the incentive to want to play Puffin is the pirate cards, because I think they're really powerful. And not only are they powerful, but I think they fit into the flow of her hero power much better, like how you're going to want to maintain economy with gold and convert that into cogs. Obviously, the pirate card pool appeals much further towards that than like the mechanologist boost card pool. But what do I know? I'm not like a mech expert by any means. I just like playing the game and having good fundamentals. And I think this list is really good at just playing the game, interacting a lot with your opponent, having a good opportunity to outskill them or get better value out of your cards. And it's just fun. Like dropping Palantir with 3 cogs, it's just sick. Like it's super fun to do that. Pummeling Conqueror of the High Seas or being able to pummel Command and Conquer is always awesome. It's just a very fun deck to play. So if you enjoy that, I don't think that the list is very, I don't think it's like tier 1 or anything by any means. I think that she has a lot of matchups she currently struggles with that exist in the game. Like Florian, for one, is super rough. Like this particular list into Florian is basically unwinnable, I feel like. And there's a number of other matchups where you just kind of struggle. But the game is at a point right now where there's a lot of change occurring. The meta is shifting. A lot of heroes are moving in and out of the meta right now. So I think that she's still in a place where she's slightly unsettled in her position, but give it a few more months, I think that she could find her foothold and really establish herself in a good place. Because again, like your Prism matchup is actually pretty good. You can play into the Assassins pretty well. Like you have a lot of back and forth mid-range. Against the Rangers, it seems to be relatively okay. So I think that she has a lot of good play into the meta. There's just certain things that are lingering around now that are just very powerful or that's kind of push her down. And her game plan is still kind of slow. So until the game slows down a little bit more, and there aren't decks that can abuse mid-range slow gameplay like the Earth Heroes, for example, that's really the difficult thing for this deck, is that like it's trying to play a fair mid-range value game plan, and the Earth Heroes do that, but they just do it way more unfair because Verdant has like her side OTK plan that she can play for, and then Florian just is like the ultimate mid-ranging deck, where between all your split damage, your extra value that you accrue when your hero power is turned on, and then of course Felling and Plow are just unfair cards. She can't really stand up to that at this point, but I do think down the line she can obviously find her footing, no problem. The deck is not far off from that. And then the last thing I want to just say about Palantir here is the card, you might want to always just shotgun going to 9 to destroy whatever equipment that they put in front of it. But what I've found is that a lot of times your opponent will wait for you to go to 9 to destroy their equipment so that you block, they lose like 1 or 2 block, and then they put a D-react in front of the card. So a lot of times if your primary goal is to just push damage and you don't really care about the equipment that they put in front of you to block with, pump it to 8 in reactions, and then just pass priority and say, do you want to D-react? And now they're going to have to choose like, okay, I'll D-react, and then you pump it to 9, then you destroy their D-react, or they just miss their opportunity to D-react entirely, and you might miss that 1 extra damage or 2 extra damage or whatever that you would have gotten by destroying their equipment, but you prevent them from giving you a D-react and blocking 4 more value or 4+ more value or whatever it may be. So sometimes just holding the Palantir reaction to blow up a D-react is higher value than just sending it and destroying whatever equipment they put on the chain. Now, of course, that's obviously game state dependent and matchup dependent, because some matchups you do want to just destroy their equipment. But keep that in mind. That's something I've learned as I've played more from the deck. Having the psych out of holding so that they don't get the D-react value a lot of times ends up being a higher value for you. Okay, I think that's all I really have to say at this point. Like any kind of other tips or tricks I think you can learn from playing the deck. Outright, when you first play it, it's a little confusing because there's a lot of moving parts, no pun intended. But once you get a hold of it, it's a pretty straightforward thing. The skill comes really from maintaining a board, maintaining an economy, and knowing how to utilize it at its highest efficiency, and then knowing when to pivot, like when you want to invest your important pieces, like the tinkering, so that you get that extra cog. Do you want to do that so you can get a Palantir off on your next turn? Or do you want to do that so you can convert the cog into an extra 3 block with Galvanize or something, right? And I think that those are really where the skill set and bigger decisions come in. And then, of course, pit stacking and then matchup knowledge, as always. So I'll have the list down below in the description. Mess with it. It's, again, by no means perfect. It's by no means complete, but I do think it's a really solid framework if you're interested in playing a pirate-oriented pummel, puffin, boat list, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. My name is Sam Dando. Again, this is MinMax Games. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, you know, whatever, all that stuff. We love you guys. Thanks for coming back and continuing to watch our videos. And of course, we'll try to get the more content out that we can, and hopefully it's stuff that you enjoy watching. So we'll see you later. Peace out, guys.